Are you ready to race a half marathon? Hopefully you've logged the miles and done the training, but what about the race day itself? Knowing how to pace your first attempt at a new distance can be a challenge. Getting it wrong can mean a waste of all that effort. But getting it right can make sure that you make the most of all the effort you put into training. Well, today we're here to help you with how to pace your perfect half marathon. Okay, I'm going to start by making a bit of a presumption here, that you've trained and prepared for this half marathon. Now, obviously, being trained and prepared for a half marathon is important so that you've got the fitness to complete it. But it's also important when it comes to looking at pacing. What the speed you maintained and the training that you did is going to go a long way to estimating the pace you can sustain on race day. You need to be honest here, because if you skipped a bunch of the training, your original goal pace may be a little over-ambitious. Within your training, you should probably have done some long runs, some maybe even approaching the half marathon distance, and you should have done some sessions that are at race pace too. Now, you may be shouting at me, wait, but what is my race pace? That's what we're here to find out. Well, fair enough. Let's rewind slightly. Now, calculating your perfect race pace for a new distance can be tricky. After all, you are entering unknown territory. But the times that you've run in training and at previous race distances can definitely help. For example, if you've run a 10K, you can use this time to predict your 21K time. Generally, you're going to be about 5% slower for a half marathon. After all, it's double the distance. So work around the 5%. For example, if you ran a 50-minute 10K, that's 5 minutes per K or 8 minutes per mile, you can expect for a half marathon to run around 5:15 per kilometer or 8:24 per mile to give you a finishing time of around 1 hour 50. And if you've been training with heart rate, a similar equation is going to apply. Normally about 5% lower heart rate than you could maintain for that 10K or 75% of your max heart rate. But a word of caution when it comes to heart rate. A lot of factors affect your heart rate, and a lot of those factors are visible on race day, such as nerves, pre-race tension, pre-race coffee, even the temperature can affect your heart rate. So beware of relying too heavily on heart rate alone to pace your half marathon. The best measure of the pace you can sustain for race day is what you've managed in training. You should have done some higher intensity sessions such as your tempo run or even intervals at race pace. If you have done these are a pretty good guide of what you can sustain, but you may have been doing them much shorter than race day and thought, there's no ways I can sustain this for 21 kilometers. The truth is, you probably can. On race day, you'll be well rested and tapered and at peak fitness. You'll also have the support of crowds and cheering and fellow runners, and this will definitely increase the pace you can sustain and the length you can sustain it for. Now I'm going to take away the numbers for a moment and focus on feel, because one of the best ways to pace your half marathon, especially if it's your first attempt, is on feel. Try to think back to that training and where you found that flow and you felt that rhythm of race pace and what that felt like. If you can nail down how that felt, it doesn't really matter what your heart rate is doing or what your pace is doing. That'll be the pace that you can sustain for race day. A half marathon race pace is generally something where it's comfortable but uncomfortable, or comfortably uncomfortable. You should be able to speak a few words or a short sentence or two. You shouldn't be completely out of breath that you can't say a single word. If you are, you're probably pushing a little bit too hard. So consider what that feels like on training and use that pace to guide you on race day. Okay, that's the prep. Now we need to look at race day itself and what you can do to help yourself nail that pace you've decided to go for. A lot of factors will affect your ability to hold the pace that you've decided to aim for race day. First, let's look at the time leading up to the start. In the last few weeks or 10 days, you need to ease down your training and make sure you're rested up and ready to go on race day. You also need to make sure you're eating healthy all the way up to race day, including the night before having a carbohydrate-rich meal. Then on race morning, you want to have a decent breakfast, but something you've tried before in training. You don't want it to affect your race. You want to have this well before the race so that you've got time to digest it, and you also want to give yourself plenty of time to get to the race start. You don't want to be rushing to get to that race start on race morning. Also on race morning, you need to include some time for a warm-up. Now, the faster your goal race pace, the more important this warm-up is, but it's important for everyone. The better warmed up you are, the more easy it is to settle into that rhythm, that pace that you've set for yourself. And it won't take you time to build up to that pace, or you're less likely to go out too fast. Another note on pacing yourself on that morning is you're going to be standing in that start pen for a while with a bunch of other athletes, and the nerves are going to get more and more intense as you get closer to the race start. This is a good time to talk to yourself and calm yourself down, because you don't want to go out too fast just because of that race day adrenaline. In most races, there'll be some kind of seeding policy where you should be surrounded by people who have similar abilities and have similar goal times to you. But don't rely on this too much, because there's a pretty good chance a lot of them are going to get it wrong, and there's a pretty good chance they're all going to get too excited and go out too fast. Stick to your own plan and make sure you stick to your goal time rather than getting swept along with the crowd and starting out too fast. If you are at a big race like that, there's probably pacers around. These pacers are experienced runners who have set a goal pace or a goal time to finish in, and they'll generally have a great big flag or something that they're running with their goal time on it, so you can stick near them and be pretty certain that they're going to get you to the finish around that time. These will certainly be more reliable than those other runners around you, so if you can find one near your goal time, stick to them. Keep it steady at the start. Your goal race pace may actually feel too slow because you're so well rested and feeling so good, but don't push it too hard too early. You can glance at your watch to get an idea of your pace, but be aware of a few things when it comes to your watch. Firstly, GPS watches kind of go up and down, and any snapshot of the pace may not be terribly accurate for the pace you're actually holding. It's far better to set a lap split or a kilometer split that automatically times every kilometer so that you can see what you're sustaining generally over a kilometer, rather than glancing at your watch and seeing the wrong time for that particular moment. You can also use the kilometer markers on the course, but also a word of caution on those. They're not always that accurate, so don't rely on them too heavily, and if one of them seems particularly slow or particularly fast, don't get too hung up on it. If you have set yourself a specific goal time that you absolutely want to hit, what you can do is do the maths in your head to make sure you're on track, or write your splits down, perhaps on your hand in a Sharpie, or at least have them memorized in your head so you can make sure you're on track as you go. But seeing as this is your first time doing this new distance, I'd recommend being a little bit more fluid than that on race day. You are heading into the unknown. It's worthwhile looking at the course maps beforehand and knowing your route a little bit so you know where the trickier parts of the course are. And by trickier parts, I don't just mean the harder parts like the uphills, I also mean the downhills, because it's important that you pace these well. You can relax a little bit and go a little faster on the downhills, but don't go sprinting down them. Similarly, for the uphills, you can work a little bit harder, but also don't push too hard. It's okay to slow down a little bit on the uphills and make it up again later on the downhills. You want to keep a fairly even pace and a fairly even effort level so that you can keep that effort all the way to the finish line. As you settle into your rhythm of your race day pace, keep focusing back to your body and how it feels. Can you still talk comfortably? Is it still comfortable? Is it still a pace you can sustain? Don't get dragged along to increasing that pace. If you start feeling like you breathe in a bit too hard, back it off a little bit and save something for the end of the race. As you do come towards the end of the race, if your goal is near, you can start really pushing it, ignore that pace, and just empty the tank as you get closer to the finish line. If your goal is just to enjoy it, this is where you can relax, not worry about pace so much, and soak in the atmosphere of what you've achieved by finishing your first half marathon. Having a pacing plan can help you nail that first half marathon, but remember to be flexible, and things don't always go according to plan. If it starts going wrong, keep pushing and get to that finish line. You may not have hit your goal pace or your goal finish time, but you will have set a benchmark for yourself and something that you can aim for the next time you do a half marathon. If this video has helped you to nail that first half marathon, let us know in the comment section down below. We'd love to hear how it went. And don't forget to like this video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to GTN for more videos like this and about all things running.